Hi everyone, thank you for joining me on my channel today. I am Brittany Quinn and I am so excited that you're here to join me with this video. So today I wanted to just talk about online private music lessons. So this can be an overwhelming thing to start in your studio if you have never done it before, but I want to show you how to do it just simply and make sure that you don't have any hiccups along the way. So first of all, you're gonna be fine. Don't get overwhelmed. I know it's technology, but at the same time, it's actually pretty simple once you get the hang of it, and you just have to kind of get over that new feeling. First of all, for students, I actually wrote out a PDF that you can download from my studio website, which is brittanyquinnmusic.com. And the hope for that is really just to help you figure out kind of what I sent out to my students. It helps them set up their lessons at home, where to put their iPads or phones or whatever they're using, the materials that they should have prepared for the lesson, and also just kind of how the policy will not change and all that kind of stuff. So you can check that out on my website and hopefully you will find that helpful. Okay, I did want to mention something that's been really helpful to me with setup. I actually have an iPad stand, and I'll actually just show this to you. It obviously is very long, but this is the top part of it, and it swivels side to side, so you can go either way like that, and it goes tall. I can be seated at the same time, or it can be standing. But it's really nice to have that just so that it's steady, and then I can also make sure that it's angled correctly. Sometimes with violin students especially, I have to make sure that I can demonstrate, and if I'm demonstrating and the iPad is sitting on the piano or something like that, it just doesn't give me a very good angle, so that this really helps. So let's talk about the teacher preparation. So what you're going to need is some type of device, your phone or an iPad or a tablet of some sort, and a stand would be really helpful. You can buy them on Amazon. I can link some for you here in the description. But you are going to want to have just kind of everything that you would normally have for a lesson. So you're going to want to have a copy of the student's music. You're going to want to have the apps that you're planning on using for lessons downloaded. I personally really like using FaceTime. I have found that there is the least amount of lag time and clear audio and clear picture for FaceTime. So I prefer that if it's an option. If it's not an option for the student because they don't have Apple products, then I prefer Skype or Zoom. So make sure that you have the latest update for any one that you choose, and then kind of look around the app a little bit to get comfortable with it. The way that I have set it up in my studio is that every student will call me at the lesson time. This way I don't have to go shuffling through my contacts. I don't have to worry about, something like, I got the wrong number or whatever. If they call me, my lessons are gonna start on time. My lessons will also end on time, and I will not have to worry about looking for their contact info. That also means that you need to give your info to the students before the lessons start. So I would send it out to everybody, make sure that everybody has it for everything. So that means if you have a student that said they're gonna do FaceTime, still send them your information for Skype, for example, because if something happens in the lesson, they can have Skype as a backup. So that's kind of nice to have just to make sure that you don't have any, issues in the middle of the lesson. You can maybe quickly swap over to the other app if that's an issue. So have your app downloaded, ready to go, give your information to your students, and then at the actual lesson time, your students should call you. If they don't, make sure that you have their information kind of like just on a big list. You can keep it in a notebook or on your phone or whatever, but just so that in case you need it, you still know which number or email or whatever they have connected to their account you can call. The next thing is tell your students not to call you early. This is very important because sometimes a student might be like, okay, we're just gonna figure it out. What if we have some technical issues, whatever. The problem is that they call you early, it most likely will be in another student's lesson. So just make sure that you kind of avoid that. Let them know right away that you won't be answering unless it's their lesson time. Okay, so the lesson has started. Let's say you have technical issues, okay? You can't hear them, you can't see them. Something is happening. I know it sounds crazy, but a lot of times the easiest fix is just turning off your device and turning it back on. I know that sounds crazy, but that's like, if you're really having issues, do that. If the things that you would want to check in an app before you have to do that would be to make sure that the functionality of the audio and the video is working correctly. A lot of times when you first download something or you have your first call, it'll say like you need to allow the app to use your audio and your video, and you have to select okay. So if you don't do that, go to your settings, make sure that underneath the app listed that you have all of those things allowed. So with FaceTime lessons, getting those started is pretty self-explanatory. It's very similar to starting a phone call, and you would just answer the call when it comes to you. If you're having issues with the video, make sure that you have that selected. Usually it'll prompt you. With Skype, what you want to do is make sure that at the top right of a call, there's a little video icon. So you want to make sure that that is selected, not the phone one, because the phone would only be audio. So that's kind of how to set it up. When you start the lesson, make sure that you just put the student at ease. I think a lot of times, especially with my younger students that are doing this for the first time, it's kind of weird seeing your teacher on a screen. It feels just like disconnected and everything like that. So I would just say, hey, how's your week going? Like, what's something fun that you've done? Or do you love like not being in school, or just something like that to keep them lighthearted? And you can maybe share something fun too. And this can be literally like 60 seconds or less, just something just to connect with them and get them to talk, because otherwise they may go the entire lesson or several weeks in a row not talking. So that just kind of gets the ball rolling and makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. Then after you get that going, make sure that you have all of the music listed that they have, and have them read to you their last assignment from your lessons. So I don't know if you're like me, but I don't keep track of every single thing that my students are going through, like note by note, because they have it in their practice books and I keep track there. So at the beginning of the very first lesson, I say, okay, can you just read everything that you have? Or they'll show it to me in the screen and I'll take a picture of it with my phone, since I use my iPad for the lessons. And then the next thing is keeping track of all of the notes during the lesson. So you probably will have to guide the students that have never done this before, or they're not the older students, how to write notes during their lessons. So what I recommend is keeping a notebook. I actually have this one, and I have 2 tabs. One is for the last lesson that I had with each student. And then this one is currently where I'm starting to take notes. So if I'm taking notes, I'm at the second tab, and I can flip really quickly there. I can write down my notes. And then if I'm trying to look back at what they were doing last week, I just flip back to that second tab. So that kind of helps keep everything in place. I actually just write in order of the lessons, because that way I can just keep it all in one place. Some people do it online, and that's great. This has just worked better for me, mostly because sometimes I use my phone or iPad for FaceTime lessons or whatever, and I don't want to have another device out. Sometimes that can just be distracting or just feel weird for the student if I'm like in my phone clicking or whatever. So that's what I do. I would also, when you give the students exactly what to write down, be way more specific than you might need to be in a normal lesson. So go through things several times. For example, let's say that when you're actually going through a piece, you're like, okay, do this measure 10 times. Make sure that your second finger is higher. Make sure that you're doing this or that, whatever. And then when you're at the end of doing that piece, and you're writing it all down, and just go through the notes with them and say, okay, I want to make sure that you understand that this was the measure I was talking about for that. So I would leave maybe like 2 or 3 minutes at the end of every lesson to just go over the notes, make sure that they know exactly what to practice, and that way you don't have any confusion or whatnot, and they can also ask you questions at that point. So for violin students or any stringed instruments that need to be tuned, woodwinds, brass, all of that, you are going to need to show your students how to tune. This does not have to be an extensive procedure where they have to learn every little nuance in one lesson. You can have tuning apps ready for them to download before the lesson. And then you can also guide them through playing 2 strings at a time and having them listen. And it doesn't really need to be this, don't let it take up the whole lesson basically. But what I usually do is I will have a student play their A string first, for example, for violinists, and then I'll have them play the A and D strings together, and I will give them an up, a down, up for higher, down for lower, and a thumbs up for it's good, so that they can keep playing, but they're just going to be watching me. And I'll guide them through where their hands go if they're tuning, their fine tuners and all that good stuff, so that they feel confident in it. But I would really tell them, you have to tell your students, like, this is going to be great, we're going to learn a lot, we're still going to move ahead. Give them some goals to work for, and I think this can be a really, really positive experience. So I know I've gone through this really quickly, and this is just kind of skimmed the surface of a lot of things that could happen or not happen in FaceTime lessons, but I really, more than anything, want you to look at this as a positive experience. Because if you think about it, your students will be sick in the future, you will be sick in the future, they will be traveling, you will be traveling. This is like the best way to set up how to have remote lessons, but you're being kind of forced to. So I want you to look at it that way, like it's a really positive thing, and both I think students and teachers are actually going to learn a lot from this experience. And look for the positives. Look at ways that you can get better at it. Look at ways that you can make it more interesting. Use some theory things like this where they can still be used on your devices. So the options are endless. I also love having online lessons because I actually think in a lot of ways it creates a lot of focus. Like instead of looking at, you know, things in the room or whatever, they're in a place that they've already been. They already know what their room looks like or their living room or whatever. And they're just looking at the phone or the device, whatever you're using, and that's what's new. The other nice thing is that if you think about a student coming into your home for lessons or in your studio, there are a lot of times that they take a long time walking in and unpacking their instrument and taking their music out. And then they see something new at your house and they're like, what is that? Or they're looking at the star chart and seeing how many stars they have. So this is kind of a nice way to just get started and you go. All right, I hope this has been helpful to you, and I wish you the very best as you go out there and you teach your students, and enjoy your lessons.